Anyways, it's Craig Leinauer. He's the Inland Marine Corporate Claims Manager over at Travelers. What is up, Craig?
Hey, Mersk. Yeah, I speak a little German. I speak a little German, although I suspect that's Danish, right? I don't know.
You got it. You got to nail the accent. You got it, though. You got to nail that little accent in the AE. It's not like a pure.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it, man.
Right.
Well, hey, how you been? How are things over at Travelers? How's this Monday treating you?
It's pretty good. It's the first day of spring, so I got no complaints, right? And Travelers is doing great, so there's no complaints there either. You know, just sun's out, and that's something for Chicago, man. So.
You know, when we had Travelers on last time, we were talking about temperature-controlled shipments, right? Things like seafood, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, shipments that need to be loaded safely. A big one was lithium-ion batteries, and this was like a couple weeks ago, so I imagine these are still problems, correct?
Oh yeah, listen, lithium-ion batteries, it's a super big exposure right now. And what happens is those things, as I mentioned, those things they short circuit, they burst into flames, and when they do, they cause a fire. And that fire can only be put out with foam, right? So many times it also reignites. So this is really, and these are everywhere. They're really ubiquitous. You know, these lithium-ion batteries are in laptops and cell phones and EV batteries, you know, and Teslas. But under the right conditions, they really are, you know, catastrophic risk.
Wow. Well, yeah, it's big fires. They cause big problems. Nothing to be taken lightly. The other thing we were talking about was bulk shipments in tanks. What is going on there?
Right. So we were talking about commodities like salt and grain, and that this creates a unique sort of risk for a carrier, because if they're contaminated during transit and then deposited into, let's say, a silo, then you can become liable for what's in the silo as well. And that's problematic because your cargo insurance only covers what you actually carry and deliver. And so it creates an exposure for you that may not be covered by insurance. So that's kind of a unique risk as well.
So today we're talking about that. We're getting into claims. What claims are you and your team seeing? What's trending? I guess popular is a weird word to use, but what's the popular claim?
Yeah. Popular in my world is collision and breakage. Of course, that's what we see the most of. And collision, of course, are losses where the truck hits something on the highway or, you know, rolls over. Your most, you know, the typical claim is where is a bridge strike, right? Where the truck, you know, a loaded trailer hits an overpass and then the cargo is damaged. And that's what we see the most of, followed closely by breakage. Breakage, of course, are claims, you know, for cargo damage where there's not collision, but the cargo is damaged because of a load shift in transit. Okay. So that's what we see the most of. But I'll tell you what, the largest year-over-year increase that we've seen, and it's about 30% since prior year, are spoilage claims. And these, of course, are claims involving perishable cargo. So think about things like bananas that have to be refrigerated. And I think I've spoken before about you know, reefer shipments and bananas specifically, how they have to be shipped at a sweet spot of between 56 and 60 degrees. And if it's you know, 1 degree over 60 degrees, then the bananas are too ripe and they give off gas. And if it's 1 degree under, then they get spotty and the taste is compromised. Either way, they're rejected. So that's where we've seen our greatest increases in spoilage.
So I don't know if this is the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon where you hear something and you start seeing it everywhere, like the Norfolk Southern crash. Then like, it seemed like you know, online. I don't know if it's the algorithm. I don't know if people are just sharing more crash, but you start seeing more and more. Is that just perception? Is more breakage happening? Is more spoilage happening? And if so, what's causing that?
Yeah, no, it's a great observation, and I think a lot of it. There's a few things going on, right? First of all, a lot can go wrong with these spoilage shipments, this damage from spoilage, and a lot of it is because of inattention, I think. And there's a few things that are going on, right? The first is lack of awareness. You really need to know what you're hauling as the driver. You should confirm if there is a temperature requirement with the actual shipper. Don't necessarily rely on the freight broker who gave you the shipment to provide this to you, because it can be wrong. Also, we're seeing a lot of inaccurate paperwork, and you really need to double check this, you know, your shipping documents. Ask questions to make sure that the paperwork reflects what you're actually picking up. And ask yourself, does the cargo require you to pre-cool your trailer? What does the paperwork say? And then lastly, I think what we're seeing a lot of is you know, equipment or loading issues. And remember, you know, if possible to do this, look inside the reefer trailer, because remember, the reefer has to function properly, and the way it functions properly is the cool air flows down over the top of the palletized freight and around the sides, and then it's drawn back underneath the freight through channels in the floor of the trailer. And if those channels are blocked in any way, or if they're dirty, it's going to block the free flow of the air, and that's going to cause a temperature increase. And so, and your goods are going to be rejected at delivery. So, but listen, I should mention that not only are we seeing the greatest increase in spoilage losses year over year, but these have also really greatly increased in exposure too.
Whoa. Okay. All right. Not good. So to follow up with you there, then we were talking about invoice value, right? I was talking about that with Elizabeth, and she had mentioned that due to that, the understanding your limits comes into effect. Understanding your coverage in line with inflation. What do you have to be mindful there when covering your goods?
Yeah, inflation is real right now. And you have to recognize that your cargo policy limits from 5 years ago probably aren't going to cover a loss today. So, refrigerated losses for sure have increased in exposure. And that load of bananas is probably worth more today than the last time you hauled it. So, you need to double check your insurance limits and ask for the value of the cargo that you're picking up.
Interesting. Any other claims trending? Anything else that people should be mindful for before I let you go?
Yeah, listen, theft is a biggie, and we're seeing more and more instances of thieves using technology to get information on legitimate carriers and then pose as those legitimate carriers to steal freight. And theft is something to be careful of because not all policies cover theft, and many, in fact, exclude it. If you have a policy that covers theft, you should make sure that you also have an insurance partner who has a dedicated team of investigators to help you recover that stolen cargo, because recovery of the stolen goods really reduces the impact of the theft claims on your operation. Aside from theft, warehouse losses also are creeping up in terms of exposure, and it's likely a legacy of past supply chain issues, and especially related to fulfillment centers. Fulfillment centers are operations that during the pandemic were having trouble keeping up with contractual obligations around things like redelivery times, and this resulted in a lot of claims. So, especially when it was related to seasonal shipments that are tied to stuff like toys or Christmas cards that have to be delivered, in certain months.
Interesting. Any way shippers can sort of cope with this in the meantime?
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure that your insurance partner has a transportation claims team that's dedicated just to transportation. You don't want adjusters who are working on workers' comp losses and property claims. You want them to really be subject matter experts in transportation. Not just that, but you want to make sure that that claim team has its own dedicated group of internal and external partners. And I'm talking about folks like transportation lawyers, transportation salvers, transportation surveyors, cargo loss investigators. Those folks should also be subject matter experts in transportation. And then make sure that that whole operation, both the claims adjusters and their dedicated internal and external partners, are nationwide in scope, right? Not just regional, because cargo losses and lawsuits related to transportation happen just like transportation does countrywide. So you really need a true specialist when the unexpected happens. What you don't want is an insurance partner who is a jack of all trades and a master of none, right? And the good news is, I'm glad to share with you that Travelers in the Marine Claim is the master of one. We understand your business, and we specialize only in transportation losses. And we have a dedicated national team that's unrivaled in the industry.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing some insights on what we got to watch out for. Appreciate your time.
That was great to be here. Thank you.
Take it easy. All right.